Alrighty, hello there, folks. It's that daft American guy again here today, talking about Scottish independence, Brexit, and that sort of stuff. At the end of this, or in the second part of this, I'm going to be talking about an interesting petition that was made to the EU before the UK actually left on January 31st. So that's interesting. We'll get to that. But there's one other thing I wanted to address first before I get to that, and that is I have noticed on Facebook that all the independence marches, the one coming up in Arbroath in April, and the next one, the one following it, have been canceled due to the coronavirus and that sort of stuff. So, I was saddened by that, obviously, because the coronavirus is a pretty virulent virus, obviously, and so it's good that people are taking the precautions, obviously. So what I was going to suggest, though, is for Independence Live and those people that put together these events, that you might consider doing something kind of like what we're doing over on my other main channel coming up here soon. I cover true crime and stuff, and I got into it because of a documentary called Making a Murderer that you may have heard of or seen over there in Scotland as well. And what we did last year, and I'll leave a link to it down below. I don't expect you to watch the entire 48 hours, but I can leave a link down below to where you can kind of check it out, jump around, check a few things out, what happened, go to the end and see. What we did was we did a 48-hour weekend where there was between 4 different hosts, where there was always somebody live, where people could tune in, and we were talking about Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey's cases, that sort of stuff. Had a lot of different guests on, people who have been researching the case for ever since 2015, the end of 2015, when the first Making a Murderer came out. And so we had a lot of guests, and a lot of, at some point, some very qualified people were guests. And anyways, we put together this entire weekend of content that was strictly about Making a Murderer, Steven Avery, and Brendan Dassey. And while we were broadcasting, we were also taking donations to be put on to Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey's books in prison, where they are currently wrongfully convicted. And we ended up raising $5,000 for them, and we were able to put basically $2,500 on each one of their books in where they're each in prison. And so that was what we were able to do. It created a lot of great support in the community, and I thought it would be a good thing maybe here for you guys to consider with the whole thing with the coronavirus going on right now, because you may not be able to get together physically and gather right now physically together in one place and stuff, but the one thing you can do is connect in a virtual room on YouTube or on various social media platforms. But you can connect that way in a room that prevents the coronavirus from being able to spread, but you can still come together and you can still make a big noise for your cause. So I just thought that this was an instance where I actually had some practical, actual experience that might even be possibly be helpful to the independence movement in this situation. So I wanted to go ahead and suggest it. All right. So now we're going to move on to talking about a very, very interesting petition that was submitted to the EU on, I believe it says, the 16th of January, just before before they left on the 31st of January. An organization got together and submitted this petition to the EU. And what this petition is essentially wanting the EU, it's just petitioning the EU to recognize, number one, that the Scottish people are a sovereign people that have the right to choose their own destiny in Europe. And it basically just outlined some basically fast track ways for Scotland to kind of get back to its future in the EU. following a successful independence referendum and that sort of thing, right? So, and that's what this petition was meant to do. And I think it's brilliant because it's been accepted, number one, by the EU Parliament. And if the EU Parliament deems that the Scottish people are a sovereign people in their eyes that should be able to choose their own future and stuff, that only gives more weight, right? To my mind, gives more weight to the independence movement. Because all those people that are saying, oh, the EU won't let Scotland in because of, and then they start talking about debt that it appears to me from the financial things I'm seeing is generated by the Westminster. But anyway, the point is that the EU will here basically state plainly, probably after they review this petition, and if they choose to, answer it, they will probably outline exactly how they feel about it, and Scotland becoming part of the, EU essentially, down the road once they are able to have a successful independence referendum. I will tell you one thing already, and that the EU has already made a very clear signal, a very clear, sign of how they feel about Scotland and its potential future in the EU. So, but I'll show you that at the end of the video. But anyways, all right, here we go. We'll show you the little article here, and then we'll come on back. Scottish petitioners to the EU Parliament, Equality Nation, has had its petition formally accepted by the head of unit, Libor Bohak, on behalf of the Secretary General of the European Parliament. The petition was lodged on the 16th of January using Scottish citizens' rights to petition the EU Parliament in the days before the citizenship was removed by Act of Westminster Parliament. The appeal from Equality Nation is that the EU Parliament agrees Scotland has the right to choose its own future in Europe and that such an application would be welcome. The petition includes argument for rapid routes for Scotland to reclaim its European future following a successful independence referendum. Russell Bruce, who acted as the registered petitioner for Equality Nation, explained that the appeal had also been sent to the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and other EU commissioners. Russell said, "Our reasoning was that some parts of the petition should be considered by the EU Commission to give weight to the views of the EU Parliament. Knowing it would be some time before the Petitions Committee would consider our petition, we included a plea that it would still be given consideration after the UK left the EU on the 31st of January, as we had submitted it during the final weeks of our EU citizenship," explained Equality Nation member Lorne Anton. The petition is registered under number 0042/2020. We are not entirely confident that we were not entirely confident that we would get this far due to Britain's Brexit shambles, and are delighted that the petition has been selected for consideration, said Dorothy Bruce, editor of www.equalitynation.org. The full petition is available on Equality Nation website there at link 1 and 2, and I may look into that at a future date. So I think that's very interesting, that the EU accepted that petition, and that it's getting consideration that they might end up issuing a statement regarding it, basically recognizing the Scots' sovereign right to choose their future in the EU, Europe, whatever. And if they're acknowledging that and stuff, it only adds more weight to the independence movement and what it's trying to do, and the way it's trying to allow Scotland to choose its own future instead of being a small part of the mechanism that chooses what happens in Scotland. But anyways, that's this was, I believe, it's brilliant. They filed it just before the 31st of January when officially the UK left the EU. So it was filed in time to actually be considered and was actually accepted. So that's interesting stuff. Now, I want to just say that I think right now at this time with the coronavirus and the way it's canceling these independence marches and stuff, I think it's very important for these organizations that are organizing these marches, that are having to cancel them, that you press the advantage at this moment and consider something like a streamathon, is what they're calling it nowadays, where you get together some Scottish YouTubers that are independence minded and have them get together, a few of them, a handful of them, half dozen, however many, and do maybe 48-hour segment or 72 hours, depending on how many YouTubers you can get together that are willing to get together to talk about it. But string together a long weekend, or just a weekend, or maybe a long weekend, depending how you want to do it, where everybody knows they can tune in that weekend for news about Scotland, about the UK, about all these issues that are around independence and all the issues at stake, and there can be these live broadcasts where everybody's talking about it, and I think it could be interesting. I think it's something you can use, and because like I said, gathering online is a way everybody can be connected, but without having to be potentially infecting each other. But so I think it's a way to press the advantage in a situation that it's unfortunate that the marches had to be canceled, but maybe something else can come out of it. Even though it's unfortunate they were canceled, but perhaps something else can spring forth from it. So that was a thought I had. I wanted to share it. And just like I promised at the end of this video, I'm going to show you that one little sign that the EU has already shown that it's pretty much on board with Scotland, and that it's a sovereign nation that's allowed to choose its own future, potentially in the EU. And I'm going to show you that now. Here we go. And I'm gonna keep